All right, when you're really excited for a certain something and it doesn't live up to expectations, I'm sure hoping that that's not the case today with our first topic. I've really been looking forward to this one. Obviously, with some bad, sad news to start, but gave me the idea, and I think it'll be more of a tribute and a look into some of the pioneers of this crazy game that we all play out on the water. This is the Bite Me podcast. We have everyone present and accounted for now, because Dean is down at the ranch in deep South Texas, but it all sounds good so far. We'll see how the signal holds up. Captain Scott, Dean's here. Captain Scott is here. He's got grandkids that are fixing to tear his house up on this stupid fall break, which I will never understand why kids these days have a fall break, but that's neither here nor there. And Captain Caleb McCumber, does your kid have a fall break right now? No,
we're Needville, man. We don't take breaks. We're out there to be the best Blue Jay we can be.
That's where men are men, and the kids don't get fall breaks. I went on a rant on that on the regular radio show. I won't do it here, but I don't understand. We should not even have spring break. That didn't happen until like my sophomore year of high school. Anyway, this is the Bite Me podcast. Glad to have everybody here on the live YouTube stream. This podcast will be posted around 6 p.m. tonight. And I really am excited about our first topic outside of the sad news that we have to report. But before we get there, be sure to subscribe to the podcast wherever you get your podcast. Literally anywhere you get a podcast, you can get this. But of course, Podbean is where we point most people, so you can get all the podcasts. YouTube, of course, live every Tuesday at 3 p.m. The Facebook group page, fantastic. In fact, I got one of the things that we may or may not get to today is emptying the inbox from some of the messages I get from people on the Facebook group page. So let's get into this, boys. Damn glad to see you guys. I didn't get to fish, well, not where I normally do. I went down to West Bay, in Galveston, West Bay, and that was a lot of fun with Roy Crush from Texas Boys Outdoors. Hadn't been there in a long time. But this is what we're going to do. Legends and pioneers who changed the fishing game forever. And we're going to get into it, everything from tarpon fishing to soft plastic, saltwater fly fishing. I got in front of me, and you guys have on your speakers some of the guys that have some of the great experience with a lot of innovation. Some of them may have innovated some things themselves, and it's not something we covered a lot. And I wanted to get into it. And Scott, I believe you and Dean probably have the floor first here when it comes to Mike Williams. I think we're all familiar with Mike Williams, tarpon fishing in Texas. What was his boat called? It was the Tarpon Express. Tarpon Express, I believe. So this is kind of the entry point into what we do. But Scott, tell me about I didn't know him personally other than having seen him a couple times here and there. Tell me about Mike Williams and the pioneering things he did, the legendary things he did, and Tarpon Express and tarpon fishing in Texas, how that all got going.
Well, way back in the late 70s, I was a young kid working at Marburger's. And there was a whole bunch of old guys that used to hang out there. And Mike was one of them. They weren't all that old. They seemed old to me. I was 15, 16 years old. And but I looked up to all those guys. And a lot of them take me fishing on their days off when they're going scouting. And so I got to ride on some pretty cool boats and go fish with these guys. And Mike was always one of the ones, almost every day. He lived over in Pasadena near the store. And pretty much every day he was coming in there in the evening telling you how good it was and what all he caught. And he was really, really good with big trout. He was one of the first guys I ever knew that was a pro staffer. Mm-hmm. I didn't really understand what all that meant, back then. It was different, way different back then. As a pro staffer, you were really expected to work closely with him. And he was that for Mirror Lure. Mm-hmm. And he helped design a bunch of the different colors and tweaks on the baits that Mirror Lure was building. And one of them that he did was they would take him and Jerry Allred and a couple other guys they'd order a whole bunch of clear Mirror Lures, and they'd send them. They weren't offered, but they'd send those to them, and they'd play around with different colors. And they used clothing dyes and shoe dyes, and like heated the Mirror Lure up and dunked it in this dye. And they came up with one that was a hot pink. Mm-hmm. Nobody threw pink back then. Pink wasn't a thing. And they came up with this one. They dyed this clear Mirror Lure pink, and they were slaying the surf trout with it, just killing them. And Mike came in and gave me 2 of them. He said, "Man, you got to go at it. You got to go try these. You got to go try this out." And before long, it became a regular in the mirror lure lineup. And he was right. Went out and hammered some big trout in the surf on those. He was just a cool guy, especially for a kid, looking up to all those guys. He was on the water every day like I wanted to be. He got off into the tarpon fishing, and everybody didn't really believe there was tarpon in Texas anymore. From the heyday, it had fallen off. And he's the one that kind of came up with that. Well, he did come up with the whole Tarpon Alley thing off Galveston. And he had like a triangle there off of Jamaica Beach that he called Tarpon Alley. And he'd go out there, and I mean, he caught some monsters. I mean, they were catching, 150 to 200 pound fish on the regular. And if you get one of the old hotspot maps, there's a guy pulling a tarpon up onto the side of the boat. That's Mike. He's on the cover of the top spot. He told me about catching big tarpon in West Bay in Galveston under the railroad bridge. Nobody knew about it. I mean, nobody was doing that. But on the days it was too windy for him to get out there, that's where he'd go. And other than that, he fished the jetties quite a bit. Fished them hard. I was looking for the old write-up earlier, and I couldn't find it. Him and Jerry Allred came into the store. It was the 83 freeze, I believe. And they came in right there the night that the 83 freeze was coming. And they had gone out and they had waited on, I believe, they wouldn't really say, but I think they were on Hannah's over in the East Bay. And I'm pretty sure that's where they were. They were on a reef in the middle of the bay. And that's the only place I could think you could go wade fishing in the middle of the bay out there. Could have been somewhere in West Bay. But they had an ice chest that was unbelievable. There was two guys, and they had 40 trout. Back then the limit was 20. And there was not a trout in that ice chest under 5 pounds.
Oh, baby.
there were probably 15 or 20 fish in the 30-inch range. I mean, people talk about Galveston now like it doesn't have big fish. Well, there was a time it had some damn big fish, and then the freeze hit right behind that and killed off almost all of our trout.
Yeah,
we were in bad shape for a long time. But yeah, that was. He's written about it several times, but that was the most impressive opening of an ice chest I've ever seen in my life. It was one of the biggest igloos that they had. And they got it out of the boat and set it out there on the parking lot, and everybody was out there. And there were people calling other people at home. There weren't no cell phones. Everybody's calling all their buddies at home and at work and telling them, "Hey man, you got to get over to Marburgers. You ain't gonna believe this." And we all sat out there and stared at these trout. They were just picking them up out of the box, and it was like, "Yep, that's another 30. That's another 30. That's another 30."
Jeez.
And there was quite a few 10-pound plus fish in there. They were all thick and heavy with the winter time. Yeah, I talked to Mike a good bit, over the years, and went back and forth with him on Facebook quite a bit, on messages and stuff. And he remembered giving me those pink lures.
He did.
We talked about it, and I don't know if he actually remembered it or if he just made me feel good about it. But he was polarizing. There was a lot of people who didn't like old Mike. As he had that rough, gruff exterior of a guide who'd been guiding for 50 years. And, he made a few enemies along the way, I'm sure, but he was always good to me, and just hell of a nice guy for me.
Well, the thing, Dean, and you can share whatever you have, whatever you have regarding Mike. But to me, it's also just the influence. I mean, like what he did, how many hundreds and if not thousands of people now, go and try to find tarpon. And that's kind of like the theme of today's show, because we're going to get into a bunch of other stuff and some influences there. But, your thoughts on that and some of the influences that he had.
Yeah. Didn't know him personally, crossed paths with the fishing shows and such over the years, but read everything he wrote, knew the stories. And the dude was I mean, an absolute just ahead of his time for a lot of that stuff that he did. Or he always seemed like one of those guys that was going to be out there on the edge of the norm. You know, he was always pushing the limits. The Tarpon, of course, the Tarpon stories. I mean, he was doing that before anybody was. I mean, before it was a thing. You know, I don't know what his motivation. Scott may know more about, you know, his motivation and what drove him to be out there doing that, you know, just the lure of giant fish. But and when you talk about influences, of course, man, all of those guys from that era that wrote in the Houston Chronicle and the Post. Even the Post was then. I mean, they had the outdoors section every Thursday. They had all the writers that wrote the fishing stories. And I mean, those are the dudes that inspired me to lure fish just in general. To, you know, I grew up as a child bait fishing with my dad, but reading the stories about the jumping minnows and the stories that came from those guys. I mean, they influenced everything about what I do today. But, you know, it's a huge loss to the fishing world, man. The dude was legendary, influenced probably more people than we could imagine from the stories and such.
And I wanted to get to you just transitioned, and Caleb, this is where you come in. Well, we all do, but I wanted to start with you here. You know, let's transition from tarpon fishing to something that people have thousands of soft plastics now. Thousands. I don't even know how many different brands there are on the market. Scott just got a package from, what'd you say, a plumber in Alabama? With some break that sucker open while we're talking here for the YouTube audience. But thousands and thousands and thousands of soft plastics and hundreds of companies. What about where it started? You know, I know you've heard Scott and I talking about, and Dean knows this as well. The Boone Touts, where there he goes. He's opening it for the YouTube audience. You know, that's where I started, but I think it goes back further than that. And the influences of the soft plastics, especially you coming from, I'm guessing, you know, obviously, as you've mentioned, not necessarily a saltwater background.
Yeah. I grew up with, that's what you threw was plastics. It might have been an 8-inch bass worm or something. We've never been bait people in my family, just probably because we couldn't afford bait, but we could afford pieces of plastic.
Yeah.
But it's my understanding the saltwater, we're talking about where they came from, right? I mean, it's my understanding that the shrimp tails made right here in Houston were the first plastics. But again, I revert to Santa over there to give us the complete history of plastics. In fact, Dean, I was sitting here thinking, man, whenever Scott hits 90 and goes, which is any day now, we'll be able to tell stories about him. I'll finally have some old dude I can tell stories about.
I'm going to give those guys some credit in a second.
So I got a not really a trivia question, but it's a question for Scott that I'm sure he's going to have the background on the history on, because it was at Cut Rate Tackle on Telephone Road. They had B&L shad tails. So B&L shad tails were right after or right in association with the when Kelly Wigglers was Kelly Wigglers, the shrimp tails. And Kelly Wigglers, what they had were shrimp tails. I mean, you had a strawberry and white shrimp tail or you weren't fishing. And then so who created what was the story on the B&L shad tail? Because we would drive from the north side of Houston to go to Telephone Road because that was like the place to get them.
B&L was a local brand, right?
Go ahead, Caleb, real quick.
Yeah, B&L was Paul Brown, and who was the other one, Scott?
God dang. Brown and I can't remember the other guy's name, but yeah, it was Paul Brown from Corkys.
Yeah.
And I was sitting here going to look it up because I could not remember that other guy's name. But,
it's like that fancy word he tried to use. See, that's what happened, Dean. He looked it up while we were talking.
But that was one of those things that you would drive.
You just do it.
I mean, I lived way on the north side of Houston, and back then that was quite an adventure to make it out to Telephone Road. But yes, we would go out there and we would buy all we could afford. And there wasn't a huge variety of colors. I mean, it was nothing like the rainbow selection that's out there in the world now.
The other interesting thing,
chicken on a chain, and I mean, you had white with chartreuse tail, and white with like a fluorescent pink tail, and then white.
And then white. The other thing, the first ones I remember throwing were, of course, the trout rig. And look at that. Get to that in a second. And then the touts, which is, and I've told this story on the air before multiple times, but for those who haven't heard it, my boat is called the Highly Touted because it goes back that far from when I bought my first boat, when I was throwing touts, and I had a bunch of touts on the boat. So I started calling my boat the Highly Touted, and now
I thought that was just you patting yourself on the back.
No, it's because of the touts, because of the tout tails. Way back in the late '80s or whenever it was, I got my first boat.
Now we know the rest.
Now you know the rest of the story, and now I'm driving the Highly Touted 5, I believe it's my 5th one. So I just kept the name. But do you remember bingo lures, Scott?
Yeah. Oh yeah, I've got some.
You still have some?
Yeah.
Bingo lures was one. Go ahead.
The tout thing. The reason that every shrimp tail got started calling them the tout, because Boone Lures out of Florida was the first one to make a soft plastic saltwater, and it was a shrimp tail. It was about 2.5, 3 inches long max,
and stiff.
Yeah. I mean, stiff as a damn board. It had zero action. You had to give it all. I think that's why we still twitch our rods so hard today when throwing soft plastics.
Yeah.
You had to really give it to it, and the damn thing was thick too. I mean, it was big around.
It wasn't going anywhere.
Oh, it was not going, and you could catch a ton of fish on it because it wasn't going to get torn up. I mean, damn Spanish mackerel could smack it and it wouldn't tear. But, and then Pat Kelly came along with the Kelly Wigglers, and that's when he came out with that Long John shrimp tail, and that thing was a softer plastic and it was longer and had a bigger tail on it, and that sucker moved. When you twitched your rod, it actually moved, but everybody still called them touts. I mean, and it was like calling any other soda a Coke.
Yeah, that's what I did. It was an eponym. Do you know that word?
Yeah.
Do you know that word, Dean, what an eponym is?
I do now.
He's a white rapper out of Detroit, right?
No. An eponym is a word that becomes the product, like a Q-tip. It's not a cotton swab, it's a Q-tip. That's an eponym.
See that?
Yeah, like a tout was, and I'm with you, Scott. I used to throw those Texas whatever, and I still call them touts. And any plastic for me for years was a tout, you know, and you would ask for them that way.
My biggest trout I ever caught was on a Kelly Wiggler Long John, shrimp tail, purple with an orange tail on it. That was when they started coming up with new colors, man. It was like, wow.
Let me try this.
They got a purple one. Look, they dipped it in some orange paint on the tail. It wasn't the plastic that was orange. It was paint. And they literally dipped them in the paint and sent them out to you. But it was
and that evolved into the worm bar at Academy. When you could go and you bought them by the pound. You just pick up your bag and you could go from. They had a worm bar also.
Worm bar. Pine Plaza had a worm bar. McDowell's over on Strawberry in Pasadena, they had a big worm bar.
Well, them times have changed from filling up a big old bag a pound for a couple bucks to you know what you get in a package now
for $7.95.
But what year? I mean, let's see. That was in the 80s, I guess.
Mine was definitely in the 80s. My
the worm bar was around.
Yeah, mine was definitely
that was an 80s thing. You could go in there and just load up, man. I mean, really load up on it. Only problem was the ones from the worm bar, they were usually pretty soft.
Yeah.
You did need to load up because they'd only last for 1 or 2 fish. They weren't gonna
Yeah,
stick
they weren't the
very long.
Mhm.
they weren't
But
the
I
highest quality. but
I just think about
price
the
was right.
the market when you think of like when you really opened your eyes to soft plastics. And I'm kind of jumping ahead here because for me, I'm kind of like you, Caleb. You know, we grew up in San Antonio. My dad would throw bait and cut bait and all that. So I did, obviously. But I would read the newspaper. You know, I think it was Fridays and Sundays was when I got it the most. And some of the guys that were, Joe Doggett, Bink Grimes. And when I saw that they were throwing plastics, I was like, well, I got to try that. And, like when you think about how you were introduced, to soft plastics, what names come up?
Well, there's only one name to come up with. And you guys were talking about the worm bars y'all had access to.
Mm-hmm.
You poor schmucks had to drive to it. Much to his disdain, my dad's tackle box is one hell of a worm bar.
You kept taking them?
I fill up my pockets. And whenever I got home from fishing, they go in my mama's dryer. I grew up out in the middle of nowhere, out in the middle of the country. I didn't know nothing about cows and catching some bass in the Nueces River in our stock pond. So my dad's 100% of the credit of anything lure related whenever I was a young man.
Mm-hmm.
But I did go pull this off of the wall.
What does that say?
That's the original B&L manufacturing business card. And I was going to, I believe it or not, I held my tongue earlier because I might not be right. Because I was going to say that it was Paul and Bob Norton, but it wasn't. It was Paul and Bill Norton were B&L. I don't know where the L comes from, but it was Bill Norton that they started with the shrimp tails. Well,
that's interesting. But let's talk about like riders. Scott and Dean, and I think you a little bit, Caleb, but Scott and Dean definitely have been riding. Go ahead.
But the riders, which, man, those names elude me now from the ones that wrote. But the other one, the probably one of the most influential was the Bob Stevenson fishing show that was on 610 AM or one of the AM channels. Yeah. Every morning, on the weekends, whenever we were driving, because we were going fishing at Chocolate Bayou, I mean, we listened to Bob Stevenson religiously. And then those guys came on, and those were the ones, there was no Spook Juniors. They were bass fishing lures, but there were jumping minnows, Cordell redfins, broken backs. God dang, I'm testing my brain today, man.
It's educational though, because one of our
Scott, refresh my memory of who were some of the writers. Do you remember for the Chronicle?
I remember Joe Doggett.
Another guy out of Beaumont.
Joe Doggett, Bob Brister, Shannon Tompkins, and Doug Pike.
And Pike.
And Doug Pike. And there was another one out of Beaumont. It'll come.
And there was one out of Corpus Christi that I used to read when we were down there, when my dad would drive down there, and I can't remember his name as well.
David Sykes took over.
Yeah,
that's actually the one I was thinking of. Yeah.
Well, David took over. Oh man, them brain cells don't come back, guys. Trust me.
I wonder why. That San Antonio paper actually had a pretty good outdoor section too. My grandmother, she got the newspaper out of San Antonio, and she would save all those outdoors ones for me.
Yeah.
And so I'd go to her house. I'd have a whole stack of newspapers to read.
Yeah, I would read them, and then on the weekends, either the Corpus Christi one or the Houston one. But there's some pioneers out there. When I ask you guys saltwater fly fishing, and you think of legends and pioneers, feel free to jump in. Who do you think of? Saltwater fly fishing.
Saltwater
fly. Jose Wahebi.
Yeah.
Lefty.
Oh, was it Stinnett?
Chico Fernandez.
God
dang.
Bud Rowland's got to be in there.
Yeah, Bud.
Bud, of course.
God dang, I'm going blank on that other guy's name.
The old early Alzheimer's is kicking in.
Well, I mean, another one that doesn't get mentioned with those guys, but he was guiding down there during that time was Chris Phillips. And he worked at Fish and Tackle Unlimited until he died. He was good, hell of a good dude, got me way off into fly fishing.
Somebody said Stu Apt.
Yeah, Stu App. That's one I was trying to think of.
Mm-hmm.
I've got to meet all those guys over the years at different shows and stuff, and pretty
Mm-hmm.
cool. Stu was selling a boat one time. He got talking to me about it at ICAST, and we're sitting over there in the fly section just BSing about boats. And he said, "Man, tell you what, I'm getting a new boat. I need to sell mine. Why don't you come down to Florida and come fish with me? Come fish on that boat, see if you like it." And I said, "Well, let me see if I can do." And before I could get it figured out, he had already sold it.
Mm.
Yeah, I was supposed to go fish with Stu App. That would have been kind of cool.
Can you imagine having a name like Stu App? You're first in list for everything in school. It takes you half a second for your full signature. This is great.
Graduation was easy.
I thought Tony was like abbreviating something, but man, I dig that.
Yeah, yeah. And I just keep going back to, like, what prompted these guys. I'm going to fly fish. I'm going to fly fish for, whether it's redfish, trout, whatever, and how that all came about.
That's just that adventurous spirit.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and that was another thing, like with Jose Wahebe, the back in the day on the ESPN, every Saturday they had Walker's Cay Chronicles, they had Jose's show, man, the Spanish Fly,
Mm-hmm.
and those guys would have a portion of their show where they would just sit and talk about the spirit of what they did, not just technical,
Mm-hmm.
blah blah, this and that,
and conservation
here today. And conservation was a huge part of all of that, but
Mm-hmm.
it was a lifestyle. It was the spirit of what they did, and they really wanted that to come across in their shows. I mean, that was a huge part of the story. And I mean, I just remember sitting watching that, and I was like, man, I want to be that dude. Those guys are so cool. But it was a whole philosophy, and that's just, they were born with something special that drove them to push those limits.
Yeah.
With Jose, one of the things that always impressed me about him, and that I strive to do, he was really good with all different types of equipment. He could fly fish, he could throw a spin rod, he could throw a bait caster, whatever needed to be done. And he and I sat at dinner one night talking about that. And I said, a lot of the guys get into fly fishing, that's all they do.
Mm-hmm.
He goes, "You don't drive a nail with a screwdriver." I'm like, okay. He says, "Pick the right tool for the right situation for what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
And go with it." He said, "You don't have to fly fish all the time. You don't have to always catch your fish on fly. Doesn't matter." And so that I was leaning more towards just being pure fly fishing at that time.
Right.
And that kind of drove me back to, there's times when a regular rod and reel is a whole lot more efficient and works better. But there's also times that a fly rod will beat the hell out of a regular lure.
So, and another thing that's interesting is, and this is, people listening to us now, by the thousands. And that's why I like to have Dean and Caleb and Scott on here, because, and this is where they're going to get the big head, Caleb, but kayak fishing. I mean, let's be honest, Dean and Scott, I don't know if you were the first, but you were some of the first, and kind of take us through that. And I know you were probably influenced by someone else, but how that developed. I mean, people can point back when, what'd you say, Caleb? He's going to turn 90 pretty soon.
Yeah. I think it was watching the Karankawa Indians fish out of dugouts that inspired Scott.
Dugouts. Dean was driving by that island with all the artifacts from the pirates and said, "That looks like a kayak. I should try that."
Yeah.
But seriously, what were you influenced by others, or did you guys just kind of say this is going to be cool? I know you were in the tournament circuit, so there were others in Florida and other places.
Well, even before the tournaments, there was just kayak fishing. The tournaments were born from the sport being born, and then it turned into a nationwide connection between people communicating, and then it grew to. And actually, the tournament, the Extreme Edge tournament, was, I really can't think of one before that, and that was a grudge match between Texas and Florida. And then North Carolina joined in to that. But then there were a lot of local Texas tournaments that were born after that were quite successful. I mean, there were some tournament series that were very successful. But, you know, before that, it was, I mean, for me, I had just started my guide business. I had no money. I was broke, trying to feed kids. I was working at Chris's Marine and around, it was actually Anchor Marine before it was Chris's Marine. And on the side, because I had tools and I was kind of a half-assed mechanic, I was in there doing water pumps, pulling power heads, and they became a dealer for Wilderness Systems kayaks. I saw them hanging on the wall. And that's where my first kayak came from, just because of where the places that I fished in my skiff, I wanted to go to the next level. I wanted to get to places that my skiff couldn't get to. So there really wasn't an outside influence other than I knew that necessity. Thing would give me that. Yeah, it was necessity. And then about the same time, there was Dennis Spike was out there in California, but they were doing this ocean thing. You know, it wasn't flats, it wasn't inshore type of fishing. They were, man, but those dudes were surfers that liked to fish, and then they adapted those things. And the Scupper, which it was the Scupper before it was the Scupper Pro, the ocean kayak, was like the beginning of time for kayak fishing. And then it grew out of they evolved out of necessity to fishing, but the original kayaks were designed for riding waves and riding the ocean. And, you know, I mean, look at what it's evolved into now, but, you know, that was many years ago.
Dean, what that first wilderness kayak, what did it cost you? You remember?
It was the Tarpon 160, and it had all brass fittings on it.
Oh my God.
Yes, it was designed for the ocean. So it had a lot of features that you never see anymore, but it was less than $700, if I remember right, probably in the 600 range, which was, I mean, I traded a whole week's paycheck to get me one of those.
That's always fun to me because I have a shotgun right now that's worth about $3,000, but my dad paid $250 for it in like 1979 or something.
Yeah,
as the way stuff gets more and more.
See, Caleb, we got a couple of pioneers on this show. I'm curious on Scott's perspective here. Like, who else was kayaking? How'd you do it? What's your story?
Well, the pioneers are the ones that killed the Indians, and Scott took their money.
Well, again, it fits with your narrative. It fits with your narrative.
Scott was immune to all that smallpox in that boat and just went ahead and went fishing.
That's scurvy.
Yeah. Now, there was a store in Houston called Canoe Sport, and I don't remember if it was Pike or Doggett that wrote a story about kayak fishing in the Chronicle. And there was a couple stories came out in magazines, and the guys that ran Canoe Sport, they were a little full of themselves. They were, it was more, it started off, they were a touring kayak company. You know, it was about ocean touring type kayaks. It wasn't about fishing. And then they kind of got roped into fishing. And, but you would go by there and they would try to sell you every damn thing. You were asking about how much it cost. That's when I started laughing. They wanted you to have a rack and all this other, and if you didn't buy a rack from them when you bought the kayak, they wouldn't sell you a damn kayak.
What?
And so what was
they said you would screw it up. I just wanted to throw it in the bed of my truck. And they were like, no, that'll mess up the kayak. You know, you can't do that. And all this stuff.
Yeah, they were. So what was that dude's name? Because he was he rubbed a lot of people the wrong way.
A-hole? Is that what you're thinking of?
Yeah, me and him got sideways a couple of times. And I'm really easy going, but me and him got sideways. Then Ruben Garza was over at Fishing Tackle Unlimited at the time, and he talked Joe into bringing in kayaks. And Wilderness was looking for another dealer because Canoe Sport was pissing so many people off that it was driving down the sport. You know, it was right there on the doorstep of blowing up, but he was pushing a lot of people away because
Mhm.
to get all the stuff that he wanted you to get, and the paddle and the, all that, you were looking at a couple grand, and this was, early 90s. Sorry, but I was a poor cop at the time. There wasn't no way I was dropping a couple grand on it. Well, Ruben got into it, and he bought a bunch of blims, and you couldn't even tell what the blim was. Those kayak companies, if it had, one little piece of the decal, that was what was wrong with mine. My decal had folded when they put it on in the corner. That was it.
Yeah.
There was nothing wrong with it.
Yeah.
And mine was a Wilderness Systems ride, and I think I paid $500 for it as a blim, and got a decent paddle, and then jumped off into it because I had places that I wanted to go. I had a 21-foot shallow sport at the time that would go a lot of places, but I fished by myself a lot. And that was a big old heavy boat. And I was always a little nervous about getting into some of those backwaters in Galveston and getting stuck back there where nobody was going. So I wanted a kayak to carry on my boat and just dump it in, and off I went. And then Texas Kayak Fishing message board started up way before Facebook and all that. It was just a message board, and that blew up. I don't remember what member number I was, but it was in the double digits. I was thinking it was like 40 something, 50 something. Before long, there was like 20,000 members on the damn thing. Dean had a lower number than I did, but met a whole lot.
It was like the first. Another one that I was reminiscent about the other day. So the Lighthouse Lakes Trails Park here in Aransas Pass, where they just had a huge grant that came in, and man, there's bathrooms out there now and parking lots and a new ramp, and it's like first class park. But as we were out there talking about it, so when I bought my first kayak at Anchor Marine, and I was guiding at the time, and so I have trips, changing water pumps, and so I had the kayak, and then I bought another one, and I just got the idea that I could rent these things. And so I was based on, so we used to go to the Guadalupe River, and we would go and, where you rent a tube or you rent a raft. That is exactly what I designed the rental business at. So I shuttled the kayaks to the water. I didn't even have my shop then. I was like working out of my garage. Didn't even have that place on Commercial Street yet. But I ended up investing in 6 kayaks. I built a wooden, I have a welder, these aluminum trailers and all these kayak haulers that you see now. I took 2x4s and I built these little racks. And there's a picture of me sitting down there on where the Lighthouse Lakes is now. Before it was a park, it was just a sandy pull off on the side of the road. And I made a sign that said, "Kayaks for rent." And I sat there on the side of the road on days off for all the traffic that was going to Port Aransas, and I would rent them. And
I could see him doing it. That's what's just.
I did.
Man, an old abandoned blue tarp too.
I've always known Dean was a carny back in the day.
Oh man, dude. It was a notch just below that. But,
Dean's funnel cake, popcorn, and kayak rentals.
Yeah, funnel cakes and kayaks.
And then from the rental, that's whenever I said, I can guide these trips. And then I started guiding kayak trips along with the rental business, along with guided in the boat. And then I got the shop, and then that became legendary in the Texas lore of kayak fishing. It was Texas Kayak Fishermen is where everybody gathered. And as a joke, so Bill Harvey, who Scott did they went and won all the awards last weekend. Dr. Bill Harvey came, and we used to sit on the porch before, it was right in the beginning of TKF. And that is where we got the idea we called it the Aransas Pass chapter of Texas Kayak Fishermen, which is a complete and total joke. There was no chapter. There was no paperwork. There was no membership. It was just
It sounded good.
It sounded great, and it stuck. I mean, it stuck so well that people around the state started creating their own chapter. There was a San Antonio chapter, and I was like, whoa, that's a thing now. And so then we had meetings, and I've posted those pictures of the sign-in log from the years from back in the early 2000s from all those people. But the parties, the get-togethers, the throwdowns,
Legendary.
Legendary.
If that shack could talk.
Oh yeah. The people that passed through there, the stories, the history of how that all happened. I'm thankful every day that I was a part of that, man.
That front desk at the shack was the first time I ever shook hands with you. It was right there. I just walked in off the street. I took my kayak and went down there and said, hell, I'll see who this guy is. I'd seen him on the TKF board. We'd gone back and forth a few times. I was like, hey, go meet this guy.
And he said, Caleb, but what did he say? He said, we should go see the Native Americans. Let's go check on the indigenous people.
Came riding up on his horse with his buckboard with his kayak on the back.
A buckboard.
Something about that when I bought my kayak from Ruben, I loaded that sucker in the bed of my truck and I drove over to Canoe Sport. They were on South Rice at the time. I drove over there and backed in front of the front door so they could see it, and then walked in there and kind of casually shopped around for a little bit.
Don't need no stinking racks.
Don't need no stinking racks.
And that, the beauty of kayak fishing is its simplicity. That was. And you beat me to that one. That philosophy is so far out the window. I did a kayak trip over this weekend. I went out with my buddy Doug Grazens. He had some vets, and we took them out. And I was back. I mean, I'm same as it ever was. Tarpon 160, couple rides, a paddle, plain Jane. And I'm sitting there, and these dudes back there trailer in. Beep, beep, beep. Got the backup signal coming in. Everything. I wanted to take a picture of it as a bad example. I just didn't want to intrude or hurt anybody's feelings. I tried to do it inconspicuously, but it just wasn't working out for me. But these dudes backed up that trailer like a boat ramp and slid them off they had these custom PVC pipes that was just like a little ramp. But yes, it has the electronics that were screwed on that thing were ridiculous. The motors, my kayak sitting next to that thing was two completely opposite ends of history and the spectrum of what is out there.
Scott, what was it like the first time meeting a late 70s, early 80s Dean Thomas?
Yes, that's a good question.
That was cool, man. We hit it off pretty quick.
Were you wearing a uniform? Was he just trying to suck up a little bit when you met him?
I'll tell you what, there are stories about that whenever Scott was still an active policeman.
And you said, wait, you're a cop?
And I was still living on the outside of the law. And it was some good times.
Seems like, is this going to be a problem? Is this going to be a problem? Don't look in there. Don't look in there.
The part was Dean thought he hid it from me really well for years. I was like, when I finally called him on it, he was like, "You knew?" Well, yeah.
I knew. How could you not?
Look, I was just being polite. But yeah, that was so many parties in history of that place. I mean, so many of crazy, like Animal Chris Summers, who's no longer with us, passed away last year. A huge
Animal Chris
part. So on TKF, on Texas Kayak Fishermen, everybody
the lead here.
Everybody had their nickname. I was Slow Ride.
You didn't know anybody's real name.
No, Scott was Let's Go. So everybody you knew them by their nickname. And so the sign-in sheets that I have from all those years, that is why, because I had them sign in with their TKF name and then
Mhm.
their real name so I could know who the hell I was talking to.
And when we did name tags, we did the same thing.
So
We
tell me
had-
about Animal Chris.
Chris Summers, one of the coolest dudes you ever know in your life.
Mhm.
He went by Animal Chris on TKF. Me and Scott knew that dude 25 years.
He was
Mhm.
president of the Texas Fly Fishers Club for a long time. Just hell of a good guy.
Barbecue, cooker, mixed drinks, loved life, loved to fish, heritage of fishing with his dad around the world. Just the biggest, and I have said this before, the biggest fringe benefit of my job, my career, is the people that I have met along the way. The characters, the people, it's just not your basic 9-to-5ers.
Mhm.
It's people that just have a real zest for life. And Chris, one of those, I mean, guaranteed gonna be there every
Yeah.
single time. Not gonna miss a trip, not gonna miss a party, gonna be the first one to show up, unloading the pit or the boiling pot or whatever it was. I'm here for the duration. Let's get it on.
And Caleb, obviously I don't mean to exclude you on these. I want you to jump in wherever you can, but I think a lot of people of your generation and younger, we talk, the whole gist of this episode is the legends and the pioneers, and that's a good transition in wade fishing. I don't know. I think of Rudy Geiger, when I think of, Plugger, when I think of wade fishing, but do you guys, you and all your millennials and younger, does it hit you that, how far this whole industry has come and where it all started?
I mean, really, what's hitting me right now is that when we're doing shows that take a trip down memory lane, I can't compete. And
hang in there, you'll be there someday.
I mean,
he's got such a smart ass mouth. He might not.
No, he's here for a reason. He's here for a reason.
I mean, yeah, of course I've read Rudy's books, but my guys are a whole different class of guys. My guys, is Kevin Cochran and Scott and all those kind of folks. Dickie over in Sabine, Scott Dickie. I can't come up with his last name right now, but that's the guys that are like on Scott and Dean's level are the ones I grew up reading and following and watching and all of that. So again, if outside of Rudy's book and listen to Scott and Dean, or shoot, a lot of people I fish with tell stories about the older guys. It's nothing I can speak on firsthand like they can. All I can do is repeat other people's stories.
Yeah,
and it's tough for me to do with this many listeners, because if I get something wrong, I'll get cooked. So I'm just kind of sitting here and listening.
I honestly don't know where, like in terms of reading, it had to be one of the writers that we mentioned earlier. Maybe it was a TV show, but Scott, wade fishing, I talked about how the soft plastics, the boon touts kind of opened my eyes, and all that. Wade fishing, I'm not exactly sure what influenced me to first jump in. Where was it Plugger?
For me, I was, like I said, I was a kid working at Marburgers, and everybody waded back then. I mean, you could go drive down towards San Luis Pass and cut off through somebody's pasture, and nobody cared.
Mm-hmm.
Where all the houses are now, you could just drive through somebody's pasture on a dirt road, hopefully not get stuck, and pull up to the backside of the bay down from San Luis Pass and just jump out and start wading.
Mm-hmm.
And so wade fishing was your kayak fishing back then. You could drive up all over the place. There was so many drive up wade in spots, and you could catch a lot of fish that way. Mm-hmm. And part of my reason for going to kayaks was because all that access was getting cut off, and there were access points where you could still launch a kayak, then paddle down to where we used to drive in and wade. Mm-hmm. And that was one of my reasons for getting into the kayaks as well. Mm-hmm. But as far as influences, man, there was so many. I fished around, Jimmy West and his dad, Forrest. He was was in that group before that. He hung out with Bob Brister and Joe Doggett and those guys. But reading Doggett was probably the main thing, because Doggett was a wade fisherman. Doggett wouldn't hardly fish from a boat unless he absolutely had to. He was in the water, whether it be the surf or the bay or whatever. He was going to be wading somewhere.
Or the jetties.
Yeah, and he fished the jetties a whole lot.
Yeah.
And man, I had to have me one of them styrofoam hats just like him. Just like Mike Williams had the styrofoam hat with all the mirror lures sticking all over it. And those were really cool until the wind blew. When the wind blew and that hat went to go fly off your head, or a big wave crashed you in the surf and it was going to knock it off, the instinct is to reach up and grab it.
No.
That is the exact wrong move to make, with a whole bunch of treble hooks hanging off every which way.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I mean, I had the hat. I wish I still had one.
Man, I had one right up. It used to hang in the shop back in the early days.
I remember yours. The cool thing about having those hats, that kind of got washed, in the history of things, and everybody started carrying them in boxes. You had all your lures sitting on your hat like that. You got home at the end of the day, you threw it down in the yard and you hit it with a hose.
Yeah.
And you set it out in the sun and it dried. And that was it. That was how you washed your lures at the end of the day.
The other thing, Dean, that I don't remember exactly how I got started wade fishing, but I knew I wore jeans. I wore jeans. There wasn't any waders. There wasn't anything. And boy, that was a trip. Boy, I kept taking an extra pair of pants. I know you guys did that. I always had an extra pair of pants.
Yeah. There was no none of this high tech clothing that we have. There wasn't no zip up hoodies with the stuff. But man, and then you wore. Yeah, well, I was going to say you wore
Converse All-Stars.
Shoes.
Converse All-Stars, because you could get them real tight. Yeah, you wouldn't lose them. You wouldn't lose them in the mud.
Those were the wading shoes of choice.
I'm sure our younger listeners are like, "This is cool, but kind of scary, kind of dumb."
Yeah. They're like, "What do you mean? Y'all didn't have iPhones back then?"
No, Converse All-Stars and jeans and little floats. Remember the little floats with the weight on them? They were about the size of. They're about 6 or 8 inches wide. And when you were drifting, you would drop the float because there was no GPS, so you could emulate the same drift when you went back.
Yeah. Well,
can you imagine? Can you imagine? I had 2 or 3 of those. I dropped one when I started the drift, and then dropped another one to end the drift, so I'd know which way to go.
I used crab trap balls.
Yeah.
So that nobody would know that was my marking spots.
Well, that was smarter than me. Yeah. And then when neoprene came along, I thought, hell yeah, this is living large here, man. And that lasts about 2 trips before you got hooks in them, and they're leaking everywhere.
Hell, they leaked out of the box most of the time. You always had little wet spots on your pants.
And they weighed like 100 pounds.
I still have a pair. I saved a pair.
Yeah, those stunk so bad because they didn't breathe at all. So you sweated your ass off inside of them, and then about once every 2 or 3 weeks, turn them wrong side out and let them sit out for a while.
Yeah.
They'd air out a little bit.
Yeah.
One of the things we did, like Dean mentioned cell phones. We were all on VHF radios, and I fished. Like I said, I fished around Mike Williams. I fished around all those guys. And, Wendy Marshall was the one I fished with the most. He passed away a few months ago, and Wendy, he developed a code for us on the VHFs because everybody followed Wendy around. He had a big old Mako. It was the biggest bay boat out there at the time. It was like a 25-foot Mako, and he ran 6-man trips all the time. And he'd be on that radio, and he'd crackle the radio. As soon as he'd talk and he'd say where he was, all these boats would be racing over in that direction. So he came up with this code that he only let a few of us in on because we also got on the radio and called him in when we were on fish and he needed it. But he had colors and different weird nicknames and stuff that made 0 sense as to where we were. We had Lonnie Smith was the manager at Marburgers, and so we had the place where Lonnie ran out of beer. Lonnie would not fish if he ran out of beer. He was done. You had to go back in. If you ran out of cigarettes, you were done. And you had to go back in. So we had the place where Lonnie ran out of beer, the place where Ronnie ran out of cigarettes, and the place where Lonnie dropped his lighter in the water. So we had greens and blues, and the place where so and so got dunked. Yeah, just so and so fell out of the boat. And that's what we ended up using. We all had maps with those little writings on them, so that we'd know where everybody was at. Cool times, man. I mean, I kick back and think about those days sometimes.
How dumb it was, but how cool it was.
Yeah,
it was both. So let's talk about Topwater. And I'm not ashamed to say, because I'm sure I'm not the only one. I remember the first time someone told me about Topwaters, which is interesting because that's damn near everything. I throw that 75% of the time now. Although I am a pioneer when it comes to popping corks. Nobody's mentioned that. I'm a little bit hurt. But when it comes to the Topwaters, first time I came across someone saying, you got to throw this, I thought to myself, ain't no way in hell that's going to work. Ain't no way in hell that's going to work. I mean, you're out fishing, you're throwing plastics, or bait or whatever. How, you see occasionally, fish popping up and taking something, but I'm like, that ain't going to work. And then the first time you catch a good fish on a topwater, it's like you never go back. You never go back. Who pioneered that?
The topwater stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know exactly who pioneered it. There was some old codgers that fished Galveston Bay that I knew they were throwing topwaters.
Mm-hmm.
The jumping minnow.
Well, they were coming in. This was before jumping minnow. They were coming in buying heading spooks, bass lures, and they were buying those. And I knew all they fished was saltwater, and so I knew what they were doing. And they were buying the broken back Rebel,
the cotton cordell.
Yeah, the cotton cordell broke back, and they were throwing those a lot. And they were coming in with some big old redfish, and wasn't a whole lot of people catching redfish back then. And but then the Rebel jumping minnow was the one that exploded. When that one took off, everybody was throwing that. I mean, that was the only really good, solid. The problem with the headings, they were more bass lures, and the hardware on them didn't hold up very well. And the jumping minnow was a freshwater lure, but we kind of took it over and made it a saltwater lure. I can remember first I was trying to figure out how to work the damn thing, make it walk, and I could see other people doing it, and I'm like, what the hell are they doing? I'm trying to emulate what they're doing. And I was over on the back end of East Bay along the old refuge, and I'm wading along there, and this guy's wading over towards me. He's a little bit older than me. I was probably maybe 18, 19 at the time. He's a little older. He comes wading over there pretty quick to me, and I thought, oh crap, I got in his way. He had that look about him, serious. And he comes over to me, he sides up next to me, he goes, hey, you know how many blow-ups you're missing? Are you ever going to set the hook? I said, do what? He goes, you're missing blow-ups, man. And it was Jimmy West.
Oh, wow.
He was a young guy, and he was just getting started. And he and I stood there, and he worked with me on it and got me straightened out on it. And I started catching fish on the old Rebel jumping minnow.
Can you imagine the look that the two guys give each other in the conversation they have whenever they figure out that a redfish will murder a topwater and nobody's seen it or heard of it before?
Yes, I was that guy.
This was back when it probably wasn't too hard to go find somewhere to get some blow-ups.
Oh yeah.
So
Jimmy was doing that with me. I was literally getting 3 or 4 blow-ups every cast. I just wasn't recognizing them as blow-ups. It was trout, and they were swirling on it. They weren't really blasting it like redfish do. But
I got a good story that Caleb can actually relate to this one. We're gonna let
SpongeBob.
Hell yeah.
We're gonna let him in.
I'm so bored.
I'm sorry, Caleb. I was counting on you sitting in the balcony and moving us along here as well. But we'll get it. Go ahead, Dean.
So, where that started. So, Caleb, what year were you born?
81.
In 1985, you were still rocking in your mama's baby arms. I would have my fish camp in Matagorda, right next door to where you lived for a while, and we had the big aircraft lights or no, it's the train. So
Yeah.
you got 4 train lights. They were 30 volts. You put them in a series, you got 120 volts. You plugged it into electrical cord, and it was the worst fire hazard you ever saw, man. The cord would melt after so long. So we put the lights on the Colorado River, and so the trout would pop on the surface out there. We sit inside, look out the window, and that is where we started throwing topwaters out there in the river. It was broken backs and jumping minnows. I don't think I had even discovered spook juniors at that point. But so we were catching all those trout on topwaters. Then in the next day, whenever we would go out, the diversion canal was there, but we would go to the old river where you go up the intercoastal and you take that little winding path. And there were all these reefs right out there. It was treachery. You really had to know where you're going. But we would drift through there, and we took the same concept from the river and drift through those reefs, throwing those topwaters, and that is where it all started for me.
What was it, reefs, or were there already those sunken barges there that had the oyster on them?
It was oyster reefs. Whenever you came out the old river, you hugged the shoreline to stay in the channel, and then you took a hard right, and it went out towards the middle of the bay, and there was just a big series of reefs out there were marked with PVC.
Oh, okay. I was thinking, yeah, there's another spot I call Old River. When y'all were doing the whole code talking earlier, I try to talk to different people, and they're like, the hell are you talking about? Tommy Kuntz can't name. Yeah, I can tell Tommy Kuntz exactly where to meet me on the bay, and he can't find it because we have a whole different set of names. Now, Dean, I had a Bite Me listener up the river the other day, and we were coming past, and I pointed at the little trailer house. I was like, that's where I stayed at. And I pointed at yours. I was like, that's where Dean stayed at. And he goes, man, I would imagine them to be a little bit nicer than that. I'm like, they were that bad back then.
No, we was roughing it back in the day, man.
So, Caleb, but before we go on, I want to ask you about Corkys, because I know you've met Paul Brown and have some stories there. I completely forgot to mention 2 important things. You were talking about a tournament coming up that you definitely wanted to give a shout out to. Is it Austin? Jeff Austin?
No, Jeff Austin. He's bringing back the Rudy's Pro next year. We're stopping in one in Hopedale, one in Port A, and then the championships in Matagorda. It's going to be a big old party. I know there's a lot of people out there jonesing for a redfish tournament. This one ain't cheap. It's going to be $2,500 to $3,000 per team per tournament. But Jeff has always been really square on, look, I'm taking out this percentage and everything else is y'all's. And the championship at the end of the year is going to be out at that Rusty Hook Ranch. And Jeff showed me, I was on the phone with Jeff this morning. He FaceTimed me, and holy cow, what a facility. I never would have thought something like that was out there. But yeah, look on Facebook if you guys are interested in coming and playing in some big tournaments, because it's going to be a good one. Everybody's very excited.
And championship in Matagorda right by you.
Championship. I mean, I couldn't think of a place I would like to have a championship more than Matagorda, because
I know.
The red fishing there has just been phenomenal. Right, Steve? He's looking at me like, what you talking about, dog?
Yeah, I don't know what
seen a redfish in 30 days.
And then I buried the lead with Scott too, man. A couple at least 2 first place in the what's it called again? The
Wildlife in Focus.
Wildlife in Focus. What happened?
I got first place. We teamed up. It was me and Bill teamed up together, and we got first place on Bobcat, third place on Bobcat, and first place on Snake with Indigo.
Mm-hmm.
And then a bunch of 4th and 5ths. I don't even remember how many. There was several of those. And then they started a new deal this year with videos.
Mm-hmm.
And they wanted a 2-minute video. And so both of us just shot while we were in the blinds shooting photos. We'd click over and shoot a little video, little clips. And then I piled all my clips together because I don't do the whole photo or the editing of videos. And Bill is a damn genius with it. And he flew his drone around, got some drone stuff, and we ended up taking first place on the inaugural video thing for the contest. And turned out pretty good. I posted a couple of them on there. Posted the one that won, and then posted the second one that he had submitted. They're both pretty cool.
Hey, Scott, hear me out. Next year for the photo contest, I'm going to sit in the blind with you every day. We're going to be in there together all day. And I'll run a drone and do videos, and you take your pictures. And then we can we can bounce advice off each other and discuss what the best way to do things would be and stuff like that.
That drone's going to scare everybody off.
I'm going to go with no.
Yeah.
Because I've seen you try to sit still.
And you got to definitely sit still. I thought Caleb was going to talk about your video like the old Mickey Mouse thing, flip the papers and it moves.
Oh.
Well, it's got some
Actually, it was on a boat. It was on a boat, Mickey Mouse.
Whistling.
Yeah. So, Dean, what'd you win this week? What did I win this week? We didn't win squat.
I wasn't even competing.
There's also there's some I sent it to you guys, but there's the People's Choice Awards, and I'd really like to win the People's Choice Awards.
Yeah, man.
My Bobcat's in the lead right now. If you go to the Wildlife in Focus website, and there's on the homepage, I think it says a deal on there. It says click here to vote on the People's Choice, and you can go in there and click on that and look from a Bobcat.
You need to post that link up on the
Yeah.
I think
on the
Camille did.
Facebook.
I'm pretty sure Camille put it up.
Get you about 10,000 votes.
Yeah.
While we're talking about winning stuff this weekend, I got to give a shout out to the guys up at JH Boats. Dustin Terry won. He brought home the national championship for Formula One powerboat racing, and Grant Schubert brought home the national championship for tri-hole racing, which they're all based off of the team there at JH Boats. You can go there almost any night. They're all sitting around working on race boats, and they had a very long year and came out with some titles. So I thought that was awesome.
All right, so what would Scott do, Caleb and Dean today? Because I want to get into the Corkys and Paul Brown. That's the last one of the legends and pioneers here. Caleb, I know Dean and Scott have some stories on that, but you do, and this is something that you've kind of mastered with the Corkys.
Yeah, see now we can relate, because the Corkys is kind of getting into my age bracket here, and that's what I did, man. I grew up reading magazines and the Texas Saltwater, or reading articles in the Texas Saltwater Fishing Magazine stuff. Kevin Cochran is the one that I really zeroed in on the most, and you know all those old plugger guys, but the Corky is something that I got to see evolve. And I thought was just absolutely awesome. I'm sure there's other names in it that other people would know, but honestly, Kevin was the one that I really zeroed in on. I grew up close to Corpus. Kevin was right there in Corpus, and just seeing the big fish they caught on those things, and you know, there's some other older fellas that I got to fish with growing up, and they were absolutely wicked with the Corky, and
you've seen the actual originals with an actual cork. Well, I guess they still do have some semblance.
Yeah,
of it.
well, that's where I went and got this card from. I've got a big display on my wall and most of those Corkys, I bet there's 25 of them in there, and I'd say 10 of them is like one of 3, one of 5 or something. I got to where I collected the one-offs more than the actual. I've got buckets of the actual ones, and if any of you guys at home want to know if you have an old one, the old ones say B&L on the side of them. That's how you tell what they are. But yeah, man, Kevin, Scott, who else comes to mind? Like, Kevin's the one that I really locked in on.
There was quite a few people that were doing. Mike Wallace, of course.
Yeah, Mike.
He was, he had the state record for so long. It was off of a Corky, and that's where Corkys really blew up. I mean, it was kind of like a little clandestine deal. It was right there, not far from where I grew up, off Fuquay. He did them in his garage over there, just down from where Fishing Tackle Unlimited is now. And it was just a cool place to walk into, because you never knew who the hell was going to be in there. I mean, there was always people in his garage, and then Mr. Brown would walk over to you, and he'd hand you some little something that he was working on and say, "Hey, go try this, the peanut." I remember when he was working on the peanut, and it was a little bitty miniature Corky, and he called it Peanut. It looked like a little bitty football. I never really caught much on that one.
Hey, they don't all work like that.
That's where the soft dine came from.
Yeah, the soft dine came out of that. And
okay.
Then, he was just an innovator. He came up with all kinds. He still does. He's still tinkering with all that stuff.
He was a cash only innovator.
Yeah, cash only.
Dude, don't you think you're going to walk in there and write that man a check?
I see him working. I see him working.
And they were like $5 a piece. And if you walked in there and asked for 3 of them, he'd just look at you, because you had a 20 in your hand. You might as well just go ahead and get 4.
When you were talking about the kayak guy, it made me think of Paul, because I walked in there one day. I was buying like 40, like I was spending money, and I was like, man, Mr. Brown, I don't have that kind of cash, but I can write you a check. And like I'd been in there a bunch and everything, and I was buying a lot. And he looked at me and said, "Son, there's a gas station down the road, an ATM. I'll see you when you get back." Yes, sir.
Guess I'm gonna go get some cash. Well,
I saw him absolutely run some people out of there
because they tried to.
He ran some people out of there while I was there, and no telling how often it happened. But
that dude sold so many Corkys out of that garage that the IRS quit taxing him per Corky and started taxing him per barrel of plastic.
Dang.
That's how the IRS figured out how much they're going to tax him. They figured out how many Corkys a 55-gallon drum of that their stuff could make, and he got taxed on how many drums he went through.
Dang. Well, and then he sold the company, so it's doing all right.
The day that he sold the company, it sent just a earthquake.
The world collapsed.
I mean, everybody was like, "Oh my God! Oh, we got to go get them all now." There was a mad rush to Paul's garage, and I got there, and there wasn't too many people there when I was there. And I got talking to him, and I said, "Paul, so what are you going to do with all this stuff around here?" He's like, "It's all going and just going to go in the trash or whatever." He said, "I'll still make lures and I'm still going to tinker and do my thing, but the rest of it just goes away." And I said, "Did you ever make any like sales sheets or anything?" Because he never sold in stores. Tried it a few times and he couldn't keep up with the orders. And so he just backed off of it. And he said, "Yeah, I made some posters. They're around here somewhere. I made these little, I don't know, they're like 11 by 13 little poster things that had all my colors on them." And I said, "Man, you think you can find one for me?" He looks around, and he says, "I think they're over in that drawer." And it was a wreck in there. He opens up that drawer and he pulls out one. I wish I'd have bought the whole damn stack. He pulled a couple of them out for me, and I got one for a buddy of mine. I said, "Hey, would you mind signing this?" He looked at me and said, "For $5.
Now that's a businessman right there.
I said, "All right, sign it." And he signed it for me. It's sitting in my safe right now. I need to have it. I need to get that thing framed up.
Yeah.
But I gave the other one to a buddy of mine. But he wanted his $5 for it.
So Dean, well, Andrew here on the live YouTube said you can't eliminate the best part of the show, which is what would Scott do, Caleb and Dean. So I'm just going to leave it all on you. Give us a quick, what would you do? Wind's picking up a little bit, a little west in the wind this weekend.
Yeah, but I mean, it's not enough to super high tide still. I mean, we've got this high tide. We're past the full moon. We're coming up on the new moon. Good tides, good wind. It's October. Bait are moving. It's just good right now. I mean, I've been fishing. I'm at the ranch today. Was here for a couple of days. Fished right up until Sunday, and typical high tide stuff, man. Look for the shallowest that you can find. I heard that the wind was picking up a little bit at the coast. I didn't really look at the forecast or the actual wind today, but when the tide is up the way it is, I want some wind. I wanted to move the boat. I want to drift. But I mean, here it is. I mean, we talk all year long about waiting for October. You got the new moon in October, man.
Yeah.
What else can we say?
Anything to add, you two?
I'm talking cow pastures in the morning with that.
What is that, Scott? Drifting crab?
This is the new lure. I ran across it just on Facebook. Saw a video of this thing, and it's pretty damn cool. Where it floats, and when the bull reds are eating in the passes,
yeah,
it's absolutely perfect looking. So
I've actually seen swimming crabs this past week.
Yeah. I see them all the time out there on the outgoing tide. And then I ran across this video of a guy drifting one of these, and I'm looking at it. I thought he was a live crab when he was drifting it by his kayak, and it was a lure. And I said, "Man, I got to look into that." So I looked into it. I sent the guy a message. As Mr. Johnny, he's a plumber out of Alabama, and good old boy. It takes this whole thing full circle, though. You know, we're talking about all these old lures and how they came about.
Yeah.
This started. He's been working on it for like 3 or 4 years. He finally got it figured out, and he's started selling them in May. and I think he told me he sold like 1,700 of them or something like that already.
Mhm.
So anyway, I ordered some from him, and they just arrived, and they're pretty damn cool. I kind of like it. They're made out of polyurethane that you make your boat rollers. Same stuff they make boat rollers out of. So they're going to be tough as hell.
Yeah.
And if I can get
Well-
into it, his packaging's pretty good too.
Let me know. Let me know how it goes when the shark hits that tough as hell lure. You guys
The shark. That's right. Hey, yeah, but there it is. Look at that.
That's
Oh,
pretty
man.
cool.
It is set up. That is very cool.
And it
All right.
floats.
How heavy is it?
It's light.
Is it
Mhm.
like
I mean,
like less than 2 ounces?
yeah, I don't know.
Thereabouts?
It might be about that.
Yeah.
But it's got a chamber, and he and I stayed on the phone for a long time, and he told me all about developing it and how it came about and everything. But when that sucker there goes shooting
Mhm.
across the water and it just floats, it's super realistic. And like I said, you can't bend it.
Yeah.
They should have put a big hook on it.
It does.
I'm aware. I'm
gonna put-
aware.
I'm going to put a single. All the guys he said a lot of the guys in Florida are using them on tarpon at the
Mhm.
passes. They use live crabs over there all the time. And he said a lot of the tarpon guys are putting single hooks on them.
Mhm.
And so I'm going to switch that treble out. It's a big heavy duty treble. And
Yeah.
That's like a
treble.
1-aught or something, or no
Yeah,
aught.
it's a pretty good size one, and it's one of the strong ones. You can see the welds in it. It's one of those 4X. So I don't know. I'm gonna go throw it in the pass and let it float down there and see what happens.
Well, we will get an update. Yeah.
I've been looking for something, and his deal was I was looking for a crab lure of some kind. He said all I could ever find were some of the ones that just didn't work. There's been some crankbaits that have come out that look like crabs and stuff. And he said it just didn't work for him, and he got tired of having to mess with live crabs.
Mhm.
So he started playing around with this. And
Well, that's cool, man. Well, we'll get an
I think it's
update
pretty
on
cool.
that.
That's Scott's next video. Catching monsters on Facebook lure.
Yeah.
You're gonna go viral, dude.
But it's
All
kind
right,
of cool
well-
to get in on the beginning or something like that.
Yeah. We went a little long. I don't think it's anybody has a problem with that, because this is a bookmark show. Bookmark it, go back to Podbean, and you're gonna get some great history on some of the legends and pioneers that were out here. Fun show. So the good news is we got a bunch of topics already in the bag for next week. Appreciate you guys joining us. I'm talking to the captains here because and Caleb, I didn't mean to hold you out of the conversation, but you did you carried your weight. You carried your weight.
What's remarkable is all the things that came in my head that I didn't say this episode.
Of course. Well, you got one more chance to say something. Appreciate you guys listening. Hope you guys have a great week, great weekend. Catch them up. We will talk to you next time.
And after that banjo minnow conundrum, I can't order lures off of Facebook no more. That was terrible.